Hi there, everyone. This is Mark Plunkett, the pastor of Heritage Presbyterian Church, and this is our weekly devotional for the third week of Advent, December 13th, 2021. I want to tell you a story that I'll bet is familiar to a lot of you. When you were younger, did you have older relatives, older relatives, who sometimes called you by the wrong name? Now, I will confess, as a former teacher, I used to mix kids up all the time, say the wrong names, especially if I was just beginning to get to know them. But I'm talking about people that knew me for my entire life, even into my 20s, and they would call me by the wrong name. My grandmother was famous for it. She would go through the whole list of grandchildren, sometimes even saying girls' names. Peter and Lynn, Lucy, she'd really get stuck on it. And my grandmother was one of the smartest people I ever knew, but it really used to make me laugh. I had a great aunt, my Aunt Betty, who was the oldest person in my family when I was in my 20s anyway. And I loved Aunt Betty. Went to see her every once in a while when I was in college, tried to see her as often as I could. And Aunt Betty had all kinds of relatives, and somehow she always kept my name straight, except for a couple of times. She would call me Carl, which I thought was just hilarious. Carl was the name of my great-grandfather, my grandmother's dad, my mom's grandfather, and the name of a couple of cousins. So Carl was a fairly common name in my mother's family. But I thought that was funny too. And I started, whenever grandmother would get stuck, I started saying, just call me Carl, because it made her laugh. And then she wouldn't get mad at me. And I started saying it to my mom too, when mom would get stuck on stuff, just call me Carl. And we were thinking, I had a lot of fun with that. And now, of course, as I'm older, what do? I call people by the wrong name in my family, people that I've known for their entire lives, especially my grandsons. I tend to call Teddy Logan, and I call Logan Teddy. And so I think my grandmother and my mom and Aunt Betty are coming back to haunt me a little bit. Now, what does all this have to do with church and Christianity and things like that? Well, you have to wonder, with all the billions and billions and billions and billions of people who have ever lived, the Lord knows every single one of them. The Lord knows every single one of their names. Now, that to me is astonishing. When the experts, the mathematical experts, calculate that we've had approximately 150 billion people who have ever lived. And yet it says in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 1, verse 5, before you were formed in the womb, I knew you. Now, Jeremiah and God were having this conversation. God was telling him, I know all about you. Before you were formed, I knew you. Now, if God knew that about Jeremiah, then he probably knows everything about us, especially our names. I think it's also interesting. There is a poster in our church office, and there's a view of it at the start of this video. And it shows all the different names that Jesus will be called. He wasn't just called Jesus, and he wasn't just called Messiah, and he wasn't just called the Christ. He was called all kinds of things, and I mean wonderful things. Wonderful things. The list takes up a large poster, takes up a huge list of names, and they're all just absolutely beautiful. Prince of Peace, I think, is my favorite. So, when you're around relatives this holiday season, and you hear one of your older relatives get stuck or say the wrong name, or how about when they do this? They say a bunch of names, then they say your name right, and then they go say another name, and then they go back to your name. I like it when that happens too. Just give them a break, first of all. And second of all, remember, the one who really needs to know your name already knows your name, and a whole lot more, the Lord Christ.